Hello and welcome to North 100, a Canadian Highlander podcast. My name is Serge. Joining me today, there's only a Wheeler.
I have like half of my drink left over.
How are we doing there?
You have half your drink gone.
You have slightly more half than I do. Bold of you.
And then we pour them into a different glass and it shows it's exactly the same. Oh my God.
On tech, we've got a James.
I've got 2 monitors.
This guy. Weird flex, but okay.
We have 3.
Oh my God, and behind us too. Another point for the boys.
Pog.
Reminder that everything we do is brought to you by you with your support of the Patreon over at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. Welcome to part 2 of our Aetherdrift set review. We've got no Nelly. He's not feeling well, but we're going to keep on motoring. See what I did there?
Yep.
Today we're going to cover green, gold, artifact, and land cards. But first, there is, one note. We don't cover all the cards in the entire set. This is not exhaustive. This is the cards that we think that are relevant, including a couple of hand artisanal picked commander cards and cards that we missed in the previous episode, which is wanted to start and throw to Wheeler.
Perilous Snare. 2 and a white for an artifact with Start Your Engines. When this artifact enters, exile target non-land permanent and opponent controls until this artifact leaves the battlefield. And then at max speed, you can tap it to put a 1/1 counter on target creature or vehicle you control. Activate that only as a sorcery.
So like a Banishing Light with upside, and it's also an artifact?
Which is kind of why it didn't really catch our eyes, is because it's very on rate.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's just Banishing Light. And now we get Banishing Light with like Ward 3.
Or Flash or...
Yeah,
right?
Some additional thing comes with it. But what gives this card a little bit more oomph is that it's an artifact. And this is something that we kind of benefit from now that we get our hands on the cards pretty early, like on Magic Online and stuff, because I played against and with this card in Canadian Highlander. And the fact that it's just Banishing Light artifact that can, get up to max speed and start impacting the board in a more damage-oriented way is that's enough for me, I think.
What deck is playing this, though? It feels really slow.
So I played against this in mono-white robots, which could also just have been blue-white robots or any kind of thing.
I mean, that deck is very mono-white.
Yeah, the fact that it has a single-colored pip, happens to be an artifact, so it's tutorable.
Sure.
And counts towards your artifact count.
No, I meant mono-white as the deck. Like, that's wild to me, because blue, I would say, is almost essential.
You could probably do both. That's the beauty of Canadian Highlander in 2025. It's actually not all check pile and Jeskai. It's really that simple. Is that for the exact same reason that we kind of passed over it?
Sure.
Is the same reason why I'm saying like it's actually worth considering in these decks that care about just having an artifact Banishing Light that can do something later on. And that deck, that makes Thopters, Servos, attacks with Esper Sentinel very quickly, has access to excess colorless mana often. It ends up fitting in well, especially if you have like Oswald Fiddlebender. I was
about to say, like, being able to tutor for this off of Inventor's Fair and Oswald Fiddlebender probably makes it really flexible when you need an answer, right?
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say it returns off Savine's Reclamation, but Banishing Light also does. So, it's very, very bread and butter, but it's amazing how just changing which do-nothing card type it is can impact its viability.
Cool. All right, let's head to the set review proper now, starting with green. And the first card is going to be Defend the Rider. This is a 1-mana instant for a single green pip. Modal spell, choose 1. Target permanent you control gains hexproof and indestructible until end of turn, or create a 1/1 pilot creature token with this token saddles or mounts saddles, mounts, crews, 2 greater power than it is.
Room zooms a little bit better. Yeah.
Now, this is not a terribly exciting card, but like a lot of modal cards, what we're excited about here is flexibility. So we have the ability to protect a threat, which is still probably honestly underplayed in Canadian Highlander. I don't think we respect combat tricks nearly enough. And this is not an uncommon effect. I think I mean, this is very common for one.
We get this a lot, but this
like
has
Snakeveil and all kinds of stuff, right?
Right, but they're all slightly different from each
Sure.
other. The closest analog is Tamio's Safekeeping, which literally is that first line of text, except I think you gain 2 life. Now, how much does a deck that's playing pump spells really care about gaining 2 life?
Sure, right. Yeah.
And then, so if we swap that for the ability to instead just, here's a threat. Because the worst thing that can happen with a deck full of pump spells is you draw all your pump spells and not your creature.
Interesting. I was almost thinking about the flexibility of Flash Defender, so you can really push damage.
Yeah.
And then leave that up, and you bait them into a damage race, and you're like, haha, I actually don't.
1 mana, 1/1 flash, or save anything. Like target permanent is relevant, right? They go to strip your land or whatever, and you protect it with that. That's kind of nice.
I didn't even think about permanent. Wow, that is stronger. Hexproof and indestructible is actually very important to be different as well.
Real annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is a shame that it does, like, we're kind of past the point of being like, well, it's good against edicts. Because Liliana of the Veil doesn't see as much play. Innocent Blood barely sees any play.
Oh, I got Shieldred's Edict the other day, though.
Well, Shieldred's Edict often, they get to choose, like, hey, sacrifice your non-token creature.
Right.
And then, the Flash Pilot doesn't do anything. But, yeah.
Shall we?
Sure. District Mascot. 1 green for a 0/0 dog mount. This dog enters with a 1/1 counter on it. Pay 1 and a green to remove 2 1/1 counters from this dog. Destroy target artifact. And whenever this dog attacks while saddled, you put a 1/1 counter on it and has saddle 1. That's a lot of text to say that this is a 1 mana 1/1 that gets bigger when it attacks while saddled. And then you can remove counters from it to blow up artifacts. Kind of similar to Hopeful Initiate. Worse than Hopeful Initiate. And, I feel like a bad guy for saying that this dog is not that good.
It's pretty mid.
Yeah, it's mid. It gets some benefit from, like, being able to say, like, this is my artifact destruction.
Yeah.
That is also just a threat that grows bigger, puts counters on, and, like, I can just saddle it with mana dorks that my counters deck is playing.
Or, creatures with summoning sickness is maybe the best case. I really struggle with understanding the timing on when you'd want to saddle rather than just push, right?
Usually it's like I play my saddle creature, then I play another creature, and now I have the choice of, do I saddle to push damage and grow my board, or do I keep it back and have a blocker? And then you have a decision point.
Yeah.
And often the decision goes into, like, well, am I pushing my advantage or am I protecting something? And if it's on turn 2, you're probably just pushing your advantage here.
I think other than Caustic Bronco, I'm pretty low on most of these cards.
Oh yeah, they're, like, not great. Some of the best ones are the ones where it doesn't matter if you saddle them.
Sure. Yes.
Which this one is pretty terrible.
Correct.
When you don't saddle it.
Yeah.
And you could, like, it's a 1-drop with a bunch of text, so I'm going to give it more points than, something else.
The cost of inclusion is quite low.
Yeah, but also, like, I'm thinking of the 1-drops I'm playing in, like, a green-white counters deck, and we're on a bunch of elves, Guide of Souls, like Swarm
Evolving
Shambler.
one, maybe.
Yeah. You have the experiment one,
Red experiment one, and the elf version one. Yeah, there's a lot of better ones, right?
Yeah, I think there might just be better. Like, it's wild to say, but I think we're good on 1-drops, and I think we're now at the point in that deck where you're just upgrading individual pieces, and this isn't really an upgrade.
All right, next up we have Molt Tender. Speaking of 1 mana dorks, we've got a 1 mana Insect Druid. So 1 mana 1/1 for a single green pip. Tap ability, mill a card. And tap ability, exile a card from your graveyard, notably. Add 1 mana of any color. So this is neat. I don't know if it's good. There's a massive depth of mana dorks that we already have access to in the format. This one's kind of cool because it does mill your graveyard. And I'm thinking of... So there's the green-black one that... Tender, I think. No, that has Tender in the name.
Elves of Deep Shadow?
No. It's like it taps for green or black, or you can tap to mill 2.
Oh, Skull Prophet.
Skull Prophet.
That's a 2-drop.
That's a 2-drop. But still, when I'm thinking of cards that both add mana and mill, like, maybe that's the closest parallel to this.
Yeah, the downside is you can't go this into a 3-drop without a fetch land or your opponent interacting with your board in a way. But if you have a fetch land, it is another 1-mana dork.
Yeah.
Or it just mills you, which is pretty good. I'm not going to dismiss this card as unplayable.
No, I don't either. I just don't have an immediate home for it. This is very low, or you need it to be very, very, very synergistic.
Maybe like a 3-color. Like if I am like a black-green creature combo deck or creature-based deck that has like a splash, like black-green, and I'm splashing blue for Nadu or Leovold.
Well, I was thinking Abzan Recurring Nightmare, and even then I'm just like, I don't know.
Yeah, these dorks do start to lose some potency if you're not playing like Craterhoof Behemoth and
Well, I wasn't even thinking Craterhoof. I'm thinking, Natural Hoarder, yeah, but in like Recurring Nightmare, you want as many bodies as possible just to sack to bring things back, and even then...
But that's what I'm saying, is that like, even with a deck like that, if you're adding a bunch of dorks, like, what are you cutting for?
Oh, sure. You
need to have... You want enough dorks so you can reliably get one on turn 1, but you don't want so many dorks that like you're Rexering into more dorks. Yeah, weirdo card. From the Commander product, we got a Pima Trailblazer, 2 and a green for a 3/3 Elephant Warrior with Trample. Whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, you get that many energy counters. And it has Exhaust. Pay 6 energy. Put 2 1/1 counters on this creature, then draw cards equal to the greatest power among creatures you control. So we've talked about energy a little bit on the podcast, and it is very much a baby burgeoning kind of archetype. Like it's not great, but it keeps getting better. And I think people haven't really locked in on a build.
Sure.
What I'm saying is I've seen these lists that have won events or at least placed well in events, and I've said I can do this better.
Oh, I look at those deck lists.
But I have not spent the time to make it better.
I look at those deck lists and I think to myself, what is this mess? Like,
well,
how does this deck work?
That's exactly. I look at it and go, I can fix this. Because if in this state it can put up a result.
Sure.
Like, once you figure out the exact build, the color configuration, I think then we're really cooking. And this is the kind of card that, like, you look at it and you're like, well, could I play this outside of energy? I'm getting ahead of you because that's a classic Serge question.
Good question, me.
Good question. But like, it is not that difficult for a dedicated energy deck to get up to 6 energy.
Oh, yeah.
And have this activating basically the turn after it hits play. And when it does, that's the kind of ability that wins you the game.
Yeah, draw 5?
Yeah. Energy is a very misunderstood mechanic in that people think of it as its own thing when they need to think of it as mana. It isn't directly mana, but what it provides is a different reason. It's basically Fortnite. Have I used this analogy on this podcast before? I've said it somewhere.
You've gone through a bunch of different, like, all right, how do I want to start this analogy? All right, so energy is Fortnite.
Energy,
go for it.
Well, it's the, like, you pay real money for this kind of currency, and you use that kind of currency to buy these. Sure. This battle pass.
Sure. That's right. Any micro game.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
I got
but
you.
I'm calling it Fortnite because I want to see James do the gritty. But
fair.
What I'm getting at is, like, you need to look at this as, you're not actually paying mana. The cost is including some of these cards in your deck and building around it. But, like, how much mana advantage is just using this exhaust ability, right? Like, if you're...
Oh, interesting. Right.
Yeah.
I understand.
Like,
because if it was any other card, they would ask you to pay something else.
Yes, exactly. So you're paying a resource that isn't necessarily paying mana, but you are getting an effect that you can equivocate to an amount of mana. And so, like, how much mana is this exhaust ability actually worth? If we're saying it's going to put 2 counters on this and then draw cards equal to its power, which would be 5.
That would also be a 5-mana effect. That's Garrick's, whatever that commander card is, the 5-mana instant draw.
Oh, the, like, Return to the Wild Speaker or whatever?
Right.
Exactly.
Like, that is a 5-mana spell, right?
Right. So you can think about this as being a card that once you have paid the cost of including these cards in your deck and building around this, you get a ton of mana advantage points where like you are getting a free 5 mana effect or free 5 cards or whatever.
Wild.
Off of that.
I have never thought of it that way, and that makes it seem better than it is.
Now, all of that could also just lose because you have to play some cards like this or whatever.
Yeah.
But I do think that I want to use this as the energy conversation because I think there is something there. And especially when you get cards like this that are like, energy persists. Nobody's touching that stuff.
Yep.
So if you just accrued over the game and you top deck this card,
Yeah.
you're like, oh, cool. Play this, activate it immediately. I am now not just back in the game, but I have a 5/5 trampler and 5 cards in hand. Right? That's, I think that's wild. And it's instant, right? You can do this whenever. Yeah. Like that's woo.
And to continue the conversation, I'll go to the next card, which is also from the Commander product, the Rampaging Aetherhood. This is a 5-mana 4/4 Snake Hydra for 4 and a blue, green. 4 and a green. It has Trample, Ward 2, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you get an amount of energy equal to this creature's power. Then you may pay 1 or more energy. If you do, put that many +1/+1 counters on this creature. So this one's a little bit more expensive. It's a 5-drop instead of a 3-drop. But wow, that gets out of hand really quickly. And Ward 2. Ward is so annoying. It just really, really is. And on top of that, with how fast our format is, like playing this even on curve lines up so poorly with your opponent's removal of like how tight the margins is for fighting stuff like that. So
you could play this in an energy deck, or you could just treat this like Colonian Hydra with Ward 2 and play this in like bigger green or like a counters deck or medium green.
The only downside with this one is you have to wait a full turn cycle before you get any value or payoff from it. But again, the Ward 2 helps with that.
Yeah, it's a 5-drop creature. There are a ton of very powerful 5-drop creatures that'll win the game, but this wins the game in a way that is very difficult to stop. Like maybe you'd prefer to play Verdurous Gearhulk or whatever, but like I don't think this one's that bad. I've got my eyes on. I will die to this card. I will die to this card.
All right, take us home with green.
Web Strike Elite. For a green, you get a 3/3 Insect Archer with Reach and cycling for X green. When you cycle this card, destroy up to 1 target Urza's Saga. Sorry, I misread that. When you cycle this card, destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment with mana value X, notably not X or less. I don't know why you'd want to put in more, but hey, who knows? So the floor is this is a 2-mana 3/3 with Reach, which is above the curve, but can be a little awkward to include in decks that aren't base green.
Sure.
But I don't know. You'll figure it out. Your mana's pretty good. And it just has an uncounterable way of destroying Urza's Saga and artifact lands and Moxen.
Yeah.
And like even with a small constructs, right?
Yeah. Oh my God. Constructs, 1 mana gets rid of Shadow Spear.
Yeah. Shadow Spear, Skull Clamp, like get rid of their uncounterable, get rid of their Time Vault.
Yep.
Like,
yeah.
What the hell, dude? I mean, it's this card is not Beseiju. Beseiju has 0 cost of inclusion, right? But this card, it's pretty good. This was my pre-release foil, and so I opened the kit before seeing the entire set, and I saw this card, and the first thing that came out of my mouth was, "What the hell, man? Like, leave my artifacts alone, please."
I feel you say that every set, though.
Yeah, and they keep doing it.
Well, I mean, maybe this will make you feel better because we're going to move to gold, and we're going to talk about some pretty powerful artifacts here.
This does make me feel
So starting off, we have the Bright Glass Gearhulk. This is the green-white one for green-white-white. It is an artifact creature construct 4/4. It has first strike and trample, and when this creature enters, you may search your library for up to 2 artifacts, for up to 2 artifact, creature, and/or enchantment cards with mana value 1 or less, reveal them and put them into your hand, and then shuffle. There are so many hits from this, like artifact lands, Urza's Saga, some of the best creatures in green and white, like your Esper Sentinels, your Mother of Runes. It also gets all of your lovely 0-cost artifact creatures, like your Walking Ballistas and everything like that. This is we're gonna do the Gearhulk ranking after all of them. but I like this one.
Yeah. I'm just going to name some cards, if that's okay.
Please keep going. Shadowspear.
Ocelot Pride, Guide of Souls, Nomad's Encore, Shuko, Sylvan Safekeeper, Zurin Orb,
God.
Black Lotus, Expedition Map, Fast Bond, Lion's Eye Diamond.
God, we're putting this in every deck.
It's really good.
It tutors for everything.
Urza's Saga.
It tutors for everything.
It's really
Do
good.
we? 2?
Portable Hole.
2, and
Yeah,
it's
you find
so
2.
flexible.
Yeah.
Sorry, like I knew this was cracked. Like I knew this was cracked. 2?
Yeah.
So white has had a couple of effects like this before, in 3 drops normally, like the one white.
Oh, Ranger Captain of Eos.
Ranger Captain
and
of Eos.
Ranger of Eos.
And Ranger of Eos specifically. This is just so much better.
Yeah, this is a card.
It's unreal.
This is a card that will get you playing green. Like if you are like the Ruin Your Evening deck, this is the kind of card that makes me go like, okay, well, what's the best configuration in green?
Now
white?
I'm splashing green Soul Sisters.
Yeah, I mean, I if I'm on the Soul Sisters version, I get the Essence Warden. If I'm not, then I guess I'll just take Renegade Rallier and like playing every way to get Guide of Souls, Ocelot Pride, and that's just what the deck is now. It's just my deck gets Guide of Souls and Ocelot Pride, and you will not beat me on the board.
It is wild to think about how much this is going to shake up some archetypes.
Yeah. This card's kind of absurd.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's weird to come in and be like, okay, this card is good, like from a vanilla point of view, but when you start thinking of it from a meta point of view, like how it fits into existing archetypes, just oh my god.
Like it's also just 4 mana, 4/4, like First Strike and Trample. First Strike is not okay. It just wins combat.
It shuts down other aggressive decks.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Next card, I guess.
Nothing compares to this thing. Although I do like this next card quite a bit. It's Captain Howler Sea Scourge. 2 blue and a red for a legendary creature, Shark Pirate. It's a 5/4 with Ward 2, pay 2 life.
That's 2 separate additional costs, right?
Yes,
you have to pay both.
You have to pay both. Whenever you discard 1 or more cards, target creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn for each card discarded this way. Whenever that creature deals combat damage to a player this turn, you draw a card.
Now, I noticed a bit of a theme with the previous episode on some of the cards you were highlighting.
This card is, I'm fairly certain, like, just incredible.
Yep.
Like, it is a legendary creature without an ETB that you need to design. You need to have some synergies surrounding it.
Now, so I did cut you off earlier with your flow. For the people who might not have seen the previous episode, do you want to talk about the archetype?
Absolutely. Go watch the previous episode. What the hell are you doing? Like it's like an hour. You got time. You're not doing anything. Close that old school RuneScape window. Yeah, actually, you know what? Keep it up and listen to us on the other screen.
And calling me out. My Melvor idol is feeling very insulted, very attacked right now.
None of those words are in the Bible. So yeah, there's an archetype I discussed that was Grixis or blue-red X or black-red discard. Like there's a version of this deck out there that uses all these discard synergy cards. So think Evora, Inti,
Ledger Shredder.
Lelia also synergizes well with all of these. Oh gosh, Party Thrasher from Veronica. Like this, there is a core that we have actually seen hop around different archetypes.
Also the Kiora's Thrasher, whatever from Foundations.
The Kiora the Rising Tide. Yeah, just like filling your graveyard. Psychic Frog, maybe you've heard of it. Have you heard of all these busted Lurgoyfs they've printed? Nethergoyf, Barrowgoyf, Pyrogoyf all care about putting a bunch of stuff in the graveyard. So there's a genuine shell here, and I am obsessed with it because it has received like 3 or 4 new cards in this set review. And this card is very much a dedicated, like, in that strategy. And it is a top-end card, right? It's a 4-drop here. But, like, Ward 2 and pay 2 life is a real pisser to pay, and even you're like, sure, you got a Caracas, but that's like a 3-mana Caracas where you're losing life. And people are going to misread this card a lot, so I'm going to break it down very, very bit by bit. Whenever you discard 1 or more cards, so if you play an effect that discards a whole bunch of them, like 3 cards, don't worry. Target creature's getting +6/+0 until end of turn. So for each card discarded this way, target creature gets that. And then when that creature deals combat damage to a player this turn, you draw a card. But what if, Serge, go with me on this journey, I have something, I'm going to pick Psychic Frog, even though it's busted, doesn't need much help.
Sure.
But it is a card, okay, let's say Wild Mongrel. The 2-mana 2/2, I discard a card, gives +1/+1, change the color, whatever. I've some kind of free discard outlet that we can find across the history of Magic. I discard 3 cards. I can target 3 separate creatures.
For each separate instance, sure. Well, yeah, in that case too. I mean, the question would be more in a Wheel of Fortune, do you get, because that's one effect, discarding your whole hand. Is that, I hate to do a judge call on the spot like that. Does that work the way you want to? Like, do you get different for all of those, or is that one instance?
It's going to be one instance.
But you still get
each
for
card
each card. Yeah, but it's not a separate target for each of those in that case.
But if we find multiple instances of discarding, we can
like you mentioned
spread
with
it
Psychic
or
Frog.
we can stack it.
This card is, so at first glance, you're like, oh, this is a commander card for a Cycling Matters deck. And you're like, no.
Yeah, it was a card where I looked at it and was like, oh, this is kind of cute. And then it's just a 4-mana 5/4 that's tough to kill. And then when you build around it, it just ends the game. Like, you've played against me playing decks with this kind of discard shell, or people have seen the North 100 where I play that check pile variant with that discard shell. And you just see how quickly you cut through your deck. And this is a deck that's also playing Abhorrent Oculus, Murktide Regent. Like, there's real power behind it when you're kind of committing to the bit. And now you just get more pieces that when you commit, you just kill them.
Wheeler.
Yeah.
I want to build a deck around Bright Glass Gear Hulk, but now I want to build a Captain Howler deck too.
Well, it's so funny because when I was going to build this deck, I noticed that somebody just like came second with this deck as well in a tournament.
Amazing.
Like, they saw this, they're like, "Oh, I'm doing this," and sure enough, all these cards. I don't think Captain Howler was in there, but I think that might be because, like, I don't know if I want to add this Commander-ish card in here, but I think this card's the real deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next up, we have the Cole Stoke Gear Hulk. So this is the second of the 5. How many Gear Hulks?
Yes,
there's 5. Yeah. 1 black artifact creature construct. 5/4 with Menace and Death Touch, which is actually a really gross series of keywords. When this creature enters, put target creature card with mana value 4 or less from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control, the finality counter on it. That creature gains Menace, Death Touch, and Haste, and at the beginning of your next end step, exile that creature. So this one is also a pretty strong effect. The flexibility in being able to hit either graveyard means you're more likely to hit with it. It's nice that it's a 5-drop that also has an enter the battlefield ability. It's also nice that it's an artifact in the red-black colors, which have the Goblin Welder sort of shell of being able to both discard it and bring it back reliably and sort of take advantage of that effect. And notably with the counter, finality is only if it dies. If you have the ability to blink that creature or do something else that doesn't involve putting it into the graveyard, you can actually get away from the end trigger and the finality counter. But that's a little bit niche, but it's probably worth examining.
Yeah, this one's a hard. I want to really like this one.
I know. I want to do that evaluation and not get into the rankings. I think we maybe have to rank them as we go.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, the Bright Glass is the best one. I think.
By a mile. By a mile.
But all these other ones are kind of fighting for. Well, not all of them.
No, yeah. It's pretty obvious which one is worse, but I agree. There's a weird fight for like the 2.5 range. There's no clear second to me.
This card gets a lot of value by being in red and black, right?
Yes.
And Death Touch, a 5 power Menace is really strong, and Death Touch makes it really strong as well. It's just a little awkward hitting your own graveyard unless it's like killing them. Yeah. But I guess you can get your opponents. I don't know. I'll try this card. I'm not convinced that this is like the correct thing to play, especially because it's not the same as Demonic Junker, the black vehicle that ETBs and kills a thing.
Sure.
But, you do have to take into consideration like how many of these big idiot artifacts you're playing that impact the board in some way that you can weld, right? Like welding a Chaos Defiler and the Demonic Junker doesn't do what Coastal Gearhulk does, but doing that may push you closer to winning the game than including the Gearhulk would, if that makes sense, right? Like maybe you play all of them, maybe you go Rakdos like welder, and just you play like reanimation cards and you're just kind of looping doing this crap.
Yeah, if you have enough way to fill your graveyard, even if you put finality counters and lose the cards at the end, if you're just pushing damage, whatever, right?
Yeah, this card is a mythic rare that costs 4 or 5 that was printed after like War of the Spark. So it's probably going to kill you if it comes into play and sticks around.
Yeah.
But is it worth the inclusion,
For
right?
sure.
Is it worth the
For
slot? My mind says like maybe give it a shot, but I wouldn't be surprised if you're like, that's too many expensive things.
That's my exact evaluation.
Yeah.
5 is so competitive.
Yeah.
Shall we?
Sure. Embalmed Ascendant. 1 white and a black for a 1/2 zombie with Start Your Engines. When this creature enters, you create a 2/2 black zombie creature token, and at max speed, it has whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So, the plus side of this card, because this card, you look at this thing and you think aristocrats, maybe you think zombies, but I'm going to go with aristocrats for my evaluation.
Interesting.
Is that it is in the right colors.
Yep.
It brings 2 bodies with 1 card, and the bodies outscale the mana value. So you get 3/4 worth of stats for 3 mana. Max speed and Start Your Engines can be a little awkward. Like it sucks that I don't get a Blood Artist right away, but also Aristocrats is the kind of deck that will likely deal damage to your opponent as early as turn 2.
Yeah.
And can start picking away at their life total very quickly. The one awkward thing about Aristocrats and Start Your Engines is that Start Your Engines, your speed is only incremented on your turn, and you get a lot of value by chump blocking.
Yeah, just making their combat turns an absolute nightmare. Right?
Yeah, and the templating on the max speed is nice. It's the Zulaport Cutthroat text, so you can get around like the One Ring, for instance. But
interesting. Oh, because it's each opponent as opposed to target opponent?
Yeah, but I don't know, man. I played Mardu Kratz like last month, and that deck is like full. Like there are so many cards in there. I don't know if this is something I necessarily want to play. I think 2025, we don't need to play cards that only do the thing some amount of the time.
There's so many Blood Artist effects now anyways.
Yes.
And then this is just a shoe-in for zombies. I'm assuming. It's 2 bodies at 3 mana.
If you're in white.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of Esper zombies.
Yeah, I think Esper's probably the way to go.
All right. Well, I mean, black-white zombies did get a lot of support from the Commander product. We have the next card here, which is Hashaton, Scarab's Fist. So, I mean, actually not even black-white. This is pure Esper.
Yeah.
So, Legendary Zombie Wizard 1/3 for a white and a black. Whenever you discard a creature card, you may pay 2 and a blue. If you do, create a tap token that's a copy of that card, except it's a 4/4 black zombie. That is the Embalm mechanic from Amonkhet, I believe, was bring back a creature from a graveyard as a 4/4. What? No, did I get it wrong?
Actually, I think you're thinking of Eternalize.
I was thinking of Eternalize. Crap, I tried.
It's okay.
Now, the nice thing about this is, specifically for zombies, which has a lot of graveyard recursion, this doesn't actually affect the card in the graveyard. You just make a copy of it. So you can both make the token and then bring it back if it's a grave crawler, or embalm it, or eternalize it, or whatever you want to do with it. It's a little bit expensive. It's a 2 mana 1/3, which is normally, as a zombie deck, you kind of want those stats flipped. You want to be a little bit more aggressive with your pushing stuff, but I think it's fun.
Yeah,
I'm not mega high on it.
I'm not super well. Our format is incredibly different from something like CDH, right?
Oh, is this a CDH card?
Well, I want to bring it up because I have seen some CDH players that, like the good ones, mention that this card is like the real deal, or could be the real deal. Because while it's a zombie and it makes zombies, you don't necessarily need to be built around zombies.
You're just taking advantage of discard and then make tokens of powerful creatures with effects or whatever?
Yeah. Like, if I'm playing, like, where I want to try this is the Esper 3 Animator deck that I mentioned. Like, the Esper, Abhorrent Oculus, Psychic Frog style deck with, like, Unearth and Helping Hand and Reanimate, so that when you kill my White Plume Adventurer, I get it back. And when you kill it again, I get it back.
Sure.
Because that deck does have discard outlets in the form of, like, Ledger Shredder, the Kiora, the
Psychic Frog.
And so being able to pay 3 to get something off that is pretty nice. The downside is this card is not a Magic card until you do that.
It's
right.
It's a very big. It is actually a large cost to include on this one, right?
Like, you're just playing Lumen Grid Warden or whatever. Like, you're just playing a 2-mana 1/3, which is not great. Blocks Ragavan, which is not nothing.
And then hoping that it sticks around long enough to give you some value.
Yeah, so like my cautiously optimistic take is that I could see myself being convinced to try this card. Like, I can see it. It's the kind of card where you want it to do something, because what it does is indeed powerful and unique. It's just like, am I including this because I think it will make my deck better or give it an angle of, like, attack that I don't currently have? Or am I just playing this because it's a new toy or it has the word zombie and it costs 2?
I mean,
right?
I imagine for a lot of people it's the latter, right? My big high ranking on this was just zombies still just needing to fill out 2 drops just to get that curve down.
Yeah. I don't know. Just in a world of a Johnny, Nicottle Pariah, and Psychic Frog, like, it's hard to convince me that this card is making the cut. The next card, though, Ketramo's The New Dawn. 1 white and a black for a 4/4 legendary creature god with Menace, Lifelink, and Indestructible. Ketramos can't attack or block unless there are 7 or more cards in exile. Whenever 1 or more cards are put into exile from graveyards and or the battlefield during your turn, you draw a card and lose a life. So this card has made a lot of noise in 2 camps. 1, competitive players that know what they're doing, and 2, casual players that see this card and they're like, this is busted. It's 3-mana indestructible lifelink menace creature that just draws you 50 cards. And they're like, well, hold on, you need to work for it a little bit. I think it is good, or at least could be quite good, for a couple reasons. 1, Menace, Lifelink, Indestructible, that's so annoying.
Sure.
That's just so good at keeping you in the game, closing out the game. It's, even though it is a creature and always is a creature, obviously it gets got by Karakas and Exile gets it and whatnot, but like, whatever. That's a legitimate threat on the offense and frankly on defense. The 7 or more cards in Exile counts both you and your opponents. Meaning that your opponent could, if they cast a Delve card, you're set. If stuff gets exiled from Deathrite Shaman or you casting Swords to Plowshares or whatever, then you're set. And when cards get into exile, they're there. Like, nobody's rift sweeping. I mean, well, one person was rift sweeping, but we're not going to cover that. And so once you have the ability for Ketramos to be online, Ketramos is now online, and that's not changing. And then getting cards into exile from play or the graveyard and drawing a card is pretty easy to do because it's not just like creature, right? Like, we can use Cling to Dust, we can use
Snapcaster,
right? We can Ghost Vacuum, super underrated card from Duskborn that is now seeing more
honestly
and more play.
Sorry,
Deathrite Shaman, I mean, like,
4 people brought Reanimator 2 Mondays ago.
Yep.
And so many people sleeved up Ghost Vacuum. Why am I saying? I'm looking at a Dust card.
Yeah, Ghost Vacuum. I mean, any of the 1-mana exile cards are really good, especially if you are paying the points for Urza Saga, or if you have Delirium in mind, because like, you want something that can muck their graveyard, but also it's another card type to, you know.
This is such a weird card because it feels like you never want it in your opening 7. But you're always happy if you're like a mid-range deck and you want to rip this on like turn 5 or something.
Yeah, it is not a great thing if you just plop it on the table. Like
You're like, Mockstraw, turn 2, go. They're like, okay.
It's not
cool permanent, I guess.
Yeah.
It's not a threat.
It's not a 1-to-1 in our format. Or sorry, it's not a 1-to-1 in other formats, but I've seen this card compared to Up the Beanstalk, the 1 in a green shaman, ETB draw a card, cast 5 or greater draw a card.
Yeah, but that draws a card when ETBs.
Exactly.
Sure,
but
sure.
I do think it might be a bit closer to Up the Beanstalk in our format, where I'm a big beans enjoyer, love my beans.
Yeah.
But on an average game, beans draws like 2 to 3 cards.
Maybe.
Yeah. And then when you're comboing off or whatever, then it's really feeding you. But like you're not getting a huge amount of cards. And Ketramos is kind of in that camp of like sometimes, you are popping off and you're like, I've got my Ketramos and I'm exiling every single turn and drawing some extra cards. But if this card just hits the table and draws me like 2 extra cards and then starts beating face or eats a removal spell or whatever, I think that's okay. Like, I think that's fine.
There's not a non-zero amount of decks that'll just tap out and play Phyrexian Arena on turn 3, right? And this is a Phyrexian Arena. It might win you the game if you wait long enough.
There's also a combo with this card.
Oh.
But the combo uses Psychic Frog. So what it is Psychic Frog and Dark Blast. Dark Blast being this works with any dredge card.
This is a dredge card, right?
Yeah. Works with any dredge card, but Dark Blast is a like dredge card you could play in like a non-dredge deck, and it could do a thing. So it's 1 mana instant. Target creature gets -1/-1.
You're targeting your own Psychic Frog so that you don't miss.
We're not targeting. We're just discarding it to Psychic Frog, putting a counter on the frog. And then we are exiling some amount of cards from our graveyard to give Frog flying. We are then drawing a card from Ketramos, and we are replacing that draw with the dredge. So we put 3 new cards in our graveyard. So what this has done is we have lost a life, we have made our Psychic Frog larger, and it now will have flying. And so if you have more life than your opponent, you could just kill them with this out of nowhere, or you could just keep churning through your deck.
Sure.
Like, that's pretty dope.
All right, let's move on. Next up, we have Mentacant Core Guide Light. I'm actually pretty hype about this card. This is a 2-mana legendary artifact creature robot star 3 for a white and a blue. Its power is equal to the number of artifacts you control. It has start your engines, and then at max speed, whenever you cast an artifact spell, you may pay 1 and you may copy it. Mostly, I'm just excited that it's a star 3 white-blue artifact creature that gets bigger based on the artifacts. Everything else is kind of just upside.
Yeah, 2 mana 5/3. That's an artifact. Great.
We were talking earlier about how like mono white and white blue just battle bots is an archetype, and this is a great include for it. And I think this archetype got a little bit of support as well. I don't know if we included the affinity card that like ancestrals and healing salves you or whatever.
It should be below Saheeli.
At some point there. Yeah. Like, anyways, love this card for that deck. Next card.
No notes. Yeah. Oil Deep Gear Hulk. This is the 3rd Gear Hulk. Blue, blue, black, black for a 4/4 artifact creature construct with lifelink and ward 1. When this creature enters, you look at target player's hand. You may choose a card from it. If you do, that player discards that card, then draws a card. So, kind of like a Vendilion Clique effect or Concealing Curtains. Notably, this can hit lands, which is pretty hilarious. You just like rip the land out of their hand.
Yeah, if they tutor for Academy.
Yep.
Finally hit it, right?
I like this more than most. I've seen the reception to this one being a little mid, but like, I don't know. 4/4 lifelink is just so annoying.
Yep.
Ward 1, it's not huge, but it can make it pretty annoying as well. The mana cost is like, whenever we look at these pips, with the example I use is Counterspell Hymn to Torak decks, and this is Counterspell Hymn to Torak mana. And then if you're welding this, great. I like this card. I would play it in Grixis Welder or Blue-Black X, like artifact mid-range kind of decks. Maybe even like a Blue-Black mid-range. I don't know. I'd give it a shot. I'll play a big idiot that gains me life that's hard to kill, that'll take the best card in your hand, get rid of it, or cash in one of my cards.
We got all 3 remaining Gear Hulks back to back, so let's go through them and then rank them.
Yep.
Next up, we have the Pyrewood Gear Hulk. This is 2 red, green, green, so 6 mana for a 7/7 with Vigilance and Menace. When this creature enters, other creatures you control get +2/+2 Vigilance and Menace until end of turn, and damage can't be prevented. So it is trying its best to do a Craterhoof impression, but it doesn't give them trample, which is kind of weird. And I guess we could go to the next Gearhulk.
I like this card.
Do you?
You do not? Yeah.
This is my last place Gearhulk.
Really?
By a mile.
Oh, no. You can Eldritch Evolution into this thing, and we now have like a hoof proper. I mean, there was Earthshaker Giant, but to the 5 people that know that card, I'm not playing it.
Is it because it's enters and not cast? Why?
Because it's getting to 6 mana in a deck like Hoof, or even certain versions of Gruul Monsters.
It's just easier because it's cheaper?
Well, it's just not that difficult to get to, right?
Sure.
We have fast mana, we have Mana Dorks, we have Gaia's Cradle or whatever.
Yeah.
And we have Eldritch Evolution. Some of these decks also can play Natural Order. And this is like a card that if it hits the table, giving your team Menace and +2/+2 and can't be prevented, kills them through the One Ring, makes it like impossible to profitably block. And then it leaves behind a 7/7 Vigilance Menace. Like that's huge. Yeah, I think this card is pretty good. I think it's going to kill people.
It's just so weird. This is like Hoof number 7. So I just thought it was a good card that didn't have a home because there's just better things doing the same job already.
I think Hoof decks should only be on actual factual Crater Hoof now. And
like no more Emerge Pig or whatever.
Nah, we're not decimating any provinces nowadays or raising any end forerunners.
Raise for and runner boar.
But this thing, like, yeah, you can just cast this card. Like, I think the evolution of Hoof in modern day Canadian Highlander should be like, what if Gruul Monsters was a bit thicker and like maybe had less like Rabble Masters, but you're still just like, I'm gonna play a million Mana Dorks, have Natural Order for primetime, Hoof or this.
Hoof is 8?
Hoof is 8, yeah. Yeah, like this card will kill people. And I think this card is more efficient at killing people and winning you games of Magic the Gathering than the next Gearhulk, which is Riptide Gearhulk, the blue-white one. The 1 white, blue for a 2/5 artifact creature construct with double strike and prowess. And when this creature enters, for each opponent, put up to 1 target non-land permanent that player controls into its owner's library 3rd from the top. And I like this one. Like, yes. I like this card in that you can weld it. And like that's kind of cool, but I do think this is the worst Gearhulk of the bunch. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Where are we playing this? And why are we playing this?
Fair. I mean, maybe again in that blue-white artifact deck, just because you have the ability to Oswald Fiddlebender and like.
Yeah, again, 5 mana mythic. It's not going to be bad.
Sure.
If you put it in your deck, you untap with it, you're probably going to win games with this card. But I'm just the least impressed by this card's ability to close out a game when your opponent like just continues. Like if your opponent has a Bitter Blossom in play or whatever, like this card's ability
because this one has none. I mean, the prowess on an artifact creature is a little bit strange to me. Like that feels a little bit of a non-bo, but obviously playing any artifact does buff it, but it feels, I don't know, it just feels wrong to me.
Your Thought Casting and Mishra's Bobbling or whatever can get this up. Yeah, but I don't know, man. I think they're all pretty good, but I'm more excited for Pyrewood than basically any of the other ones other than Bright Glass.
I'm on team. I mean, I think it's unanimous Bright Glass is first place by like a mile.
Yeah.
So I think it's more appropriate to go like Bright Glass is 1.
Yep.
Then I have a 3-way tied for 3rd. No one gets 2nd because Bright Glass is so far ahead.
Okay.
Which is Coalstoke, Riptide, and Oil Deep. I like all those equally. Equally in the right deck, I find them. For the same reason you're talking about, I don't have an immediate home for them, but I want to cast Coalstoke and Riptide over. I just want to loop all 3 of those.
Okay.
And then I was on team Pyrewood was unplayable, and I was talking to some people on Monday night, and everyone was like, "Where do you want this card?" I'm honestly shocked. Your valuation of Pyrewood is so high.
See, I'm on Bright Glasses number 1, undisputed, Pyrewood number 2, and then a 3-way tie with Riptide, Oil Deep, and Coalstoke, with Oil Deep being a little bit ahead. Like I could give Oil Deep a couple of extra points.
Yeah, it's really hard. Okay, Oil Deep and Coalstoke I have slightly ahead of Riptide.
Okay, yeah.
But I had Pyrewood firmly in last.
Really?
Yeah.
Let us know in the comments below how you rate the Gearhulks.
All right, next up, we have the Rocketeer Boost Buggy. This thing slaps. I like this.
Yeah.
2 mana vehicle for a red and a green. It's got crew 1 for a 3/2. Whenever this vehicle attacks, create a treasure token, and it has an exhaust ability. 3 mana, this just becomes an artifact creature and put a +1/+1 on it. So the play pattern is play this on 2 or 1 with a mock start. Next turn, untap, pay 3. It becomes a 4/3 and gives you a treasure token. And that is, honestly, I think it's part of the big reason people play like Fable of the Mirror Breaker, right? Is like an aggressive creature that attacks and makes you a treasure token. I mean, obviously, look, that's a massive oversimplification.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
But right? Like that just really accelerates you. And it's a big body. And where it lands on curve, ooh.
One of my things when looking at new sets is does an immediate home pop up, right? And funny enough, before we looked at the set, I had played a Jund Delirium aggro deck.
Nice.
That had like a heavy treasure kind of theme. Like there were it was Jund Delirium aggro that also had like kind of like tokens, air quotes, but like artifact tokens. Game objects. It was like Jund game objects aggro. And it was really good. It was genuinely hitting. And I look at this card, I'm like, oh yeah, I'd play this. Like it makes treasure. It is an artifact. It sticks past a wrath. It gives me another card type for Delirium. And then
the only downside for Delirium, it's not an artifact creature. It would be an all-star at that point. But
right.
But
But like getting a creature killed is the easiest thing in the world. Yeah. The next card is from the Commander product. It is Saheeli Radiant Creator. 1 green, blue, and a red for a 4/4 legendary creature, Human Artificer. It says whenever you cast an Artificer or artifact spell, you get an energy. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, you can pay 3 energy. When you do, create a token that's a copy of target permanent you control, except it's a 5/5 artifact creature, in addition to its other types, and has haste. Sack it at the beginning of the next end step. So this I would like to try out in the aforementioned energy deck. But I also want to kind of comment on this being kind of similar to the Commander deck Mishra in Grixis that folks may have seen from the like Grixis BattleBots deck that Nelson has played before, or that style of deck where it's like a beginning of combat, make a copy of a thing, but it's has this power and toughness and it sacks at the end of turn. You have to pay energy to get this, but this one is bigger. You can copy any permanent and it costs less. It's 1 mana less. So there are some benefits to playing this card. I don't think maybe I'd try this outside of an energy. No, that's stupid.
It's greedy though. You see the word artifact, and you're like, God, I could make so much energy.
Yeah, but then it's 4 mana, and I've already played out my Moxen or my talismans.
I was thinking. My brain started thinking on this. Like, well, what about a light energy splash in an artifact deck? Well, unless you just get really greedy.
I do have a really terrible deck called Artificer Pod that has gotten so many buffs recently.
Amazing.
It's just like every Artificer in every pod.
And like an actual factual Kaladesh, like blue was the energy color. So there's a non-zero support just in there without getting into like the weirdo aggro creatures, right?
Yeah, like not Sultai. Temur is the big energy color from original Kaladesh, and then Jeskai was the big energy color from like the Fallout product and Modern Horizons, and so we'll figure it out. There's overlap between the two. It's a 4-color Jeskai like green deck. Like we figured out that mana base already. Yeah.
All right, next up, Veteran Beast Strider. This is a 3-mana 3/4 human knight for 1, a green, and a white. At the beginning of your end step, untap each creature you control, and 2 and a green and a white creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. This is a ahead of the curve creature in a deck that loves to have ahead of the curve creatures. It has the ability to pump all of your mana and give your whole board vigilance.
Yeah, technically, everything you said was slightly incorrect, but you delivered the message perfectly. And like, first, Beast Rider.
Did I get like every word?
This card, yeah, everything was just like slightly off, but like I was like, you know what? He's not wrong. Yeah, you put this card's so dope. Honestly, it might be one of my favorite cards in the set.
I was just hoping I didn't look at this and be like, this is a combo card, Serge. I was like, no.
Yeah, it's just like ahead of the game.
Yep.
Human relevant creature type for what it's worth. Untapping your whole team, including itself, and then just making combat miserable as long as you have mana open.
Yep.
Like, yeah, that's dope. Like, the best part about White Plume Adventurer is admittedly giving you the initiative. But
the second
best part about White Plume is like when you're like, well, I can
untap is so strong.
Oh, it's annoying as hell.
So annoying. Oh my god.
Especially the mana dork into it, untap the dork immediately.
Yeah.
Oh god.
Yeah. And this, I mean, honestly, this in those initiative decks seems great. Like the green-white cards, a lot of them, the green one makes mana. Green one makes mana.
I could see this played in like a green-white, like little kid play to the board, kill you style deck.
Yeah,
for sure. The next card is Voyage Home. It costs 5 white and a blue for a sorcery with affinity for artifacts.
Yep.
Draw 3 cards, gain 3 life. That's really good.
Yep.
Hey, Serge, what's the next card?
Zahur, Glory's Past. How'd I pronounce that? Is that okay?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
This is a 2-mana 3/2 legendary zombie cat warrior. Actually, kind of relevant creature types here in some weird ways.
And unfortunately, yeah.
Has start your engines, has a free sack outlet. Sacrifice another creature to surveil 1, activate only once per turn. That's the downside to this free sack outlet. It's not infinite. And max speed whenever a non-token creature you control dies. Create a tapped 2/2 black zombie creature token. I like this primarily in zombies. It's ahead of the board. It's ahead of the curve. The ability to just sack a creature in response to removal, or just sack a creature for value. If you're in zombies, you could just sack your I talked about it earlier. Not Bloodghast. Gravecrawler.
Gravecrawler, yeah.
Right? Like there's just so much synergy in that deck already. Just get free value. Surveil is so good. Yeah, good card.
Yeah, it has a lot against it, but also
zombie with 2 toughness, but it's a 2-drop.
I mean, just don't overthink it.
Yeah.
Is like maybe it's not going to be the best thing to play in like Aristocrats or whatever, but like it is nice to have more cards like this and Elasil Core, like another white-black 2-drop that are pretty good at like just pushing damage without the drain effects. Like
sure,
they have a relevant presence on the board. I saw this card and just had the realization of I could make a commander deck called Aristocats, which is cat aristocrats with all the monarch cards. That's it. I just had like this. Oh, that would be a funny thing I could build. Anyways, sorry. We're talking about colorless cards now. Onto the artifacts.
I'm really excited about this card.
Market Back Walker. X for a 0/0 artifact creature construct. This creature enters with X 1/1 counters on it. Pay 4 generic, put a 1/1 counter on this creature. When this creature dies, draw a card for each 1/1 counter on it. This card slaps. It's good.
Yeah.
It's really good.
The play pattern that I've seen a lot of people using it for that I love is almost using it as a combo card and just sacking it.
Yeah.
Like pump like it's great obviously as like a mid-range threat or a deck with big mana. You just play it and if it dies, you draw. Mm-hmm. But like Academy, play this for like 5, sack it to something, draw 5 cards, keep going. Like just that, this.
Yeah, the fair implications of this card are great, but then the fact that it's a 0-drop to return off Scrap Trawler that can draw you a card. It's a 0-drop that you only input 2 mana into it to draw a card when you sack it to KCI, which adds 2 mana. So that's pretty dope. Like I haven't talked about that aspect of this card that often, but that's like a real deal thing. But yeah, just playing this out, putting a bunch of mana into it and being like, oh, you didn't put white cards in your deck? Oh no. Well, too bad. Looks like you're going to have to abrade this.
So quick Walker ranking.
Okay.
Right. We've got the Walking Ballista, the Hangerback Walker, and now the Market Back Walker.
Uh-huh.
This one's firmly second, right?
Yeah.
I don't think people are really playing Hangerback Walker anymore anyways, poor friend.
Outside of like counters or like some kind of like artifact aggro style deck I could see it in.
This card is so versatile. Don't sleep on. Don't just think of this as an idiot.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
There's like, if you've ever played Vintage Cube and you're like, oh damn, they played Walking Ballista on 2. What the hell do I do? Right? Like this isn't exactly that, but they play this on 2 and you're like, well, now I got to attack into this stupid thing and my opponent's going to draw cards. Yeah.
Next up, we have the Radiant Lotus. And now this is sort of like the weird chase mythic for a lot of people. Agree? EDH
For
players?
commander players, yeah.
6-mana artifact. Tap and sacrifice one or more artifacts. Choose a color. Target player adds 3 mana of the chosen color for each artifact sacrificed this way. I'm going to be honest, I don't know if this has much application in our format. I think a lot of people are excited about it. I mean, maybe in some kind of weird combo deck.
It can replace KCI with certain scrap trawler loops because you tap it and you can sacrifice itself as well.
Bring it back as something else. Okay.
And like you sack everything simultaneously.
Yes,
basically. So they all hit the graveyard at the same time. Scrap Trawler is going to trigger, and if you have a 7, like Thought Monitor, or Demonic, I mean, probably not Demonic Jungle, but yeah, you get to return them all at the same time, and this adds a lot of mana and colored mana. I do think that this card is mostly a commander card, but it does have that one niche of like, well, I like a backup Card Clan Ironworks.
What's that eggs card that returns all the permanents?
Second Sunrise, or face reward.
Is that a Second Sunrise card? Is this second?
Yeah, you could Second Sunrise with this card as well. Like, I don't know. This is the card that I've rolled my eyes to the most, but also I'm like, yeah, I guess I'll play eggs again. Like, I guess I'll combo kill you with this stupid commander card.
Word.
Yeah. Stride Hanger Automaton is the next card from the commander product. 3 mana, 1/4 artifact creature construct. Thopters you control get +1/+1. And it says if one or more artifact tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus an additional 1/1 colorless Thopter token with flying are created instead. I'd like this card a lot.
Yep.
Obviously has Workshop mana, which is kind of like Ancient Tomb mana. It survives Lightning Bolt, which is great. There are some weirdo construct synergies where you can find this off of Scrapyard Automaton or whatever.
It's so frustrating how many cards are robots and not constructs when you think about specifically those construct synergies, man.
But aside from that, artifact decks make a ton of tokens. I don't know if you've noticed this, but like, yeah, you make a treasure token, a food token, clue, a servo. You make 1 Thopter and you make an additional Thopter. It's not like gated by
once per turn
or whatever. This card, I think this card is the real deal. It looks kind of goofy. It's in the commander product and it's like Thopters for my Thopter deck, but it's like, no, it's actually just like, it's Academy Manufactor for people that want to win more than Serge Jaeger.
What? So before the dig, I was literally going to say this is probably the direction I probably start taking food.
Yeah.
Right? Just like artifact game object .deck.
Brother, I think you play both.
Oh, no, of course.
No,
but you forget about just food.
Yes.
And you turn it into, what if instead of cooking, I killed?
Yeah. What if my deck just made tokens and I used that to get a lot of mana from Tolarian Academy, or I don't know, just have a bunch of resources.
Ones. I don't know, man.
Yeah, just kill them with that.
It's also a Lord.
Yeah. Like this plus Psy Master Thopterist, it's over. They're so dead.
All right, the final artifact today is, of course, the Aether Spark. We couldn't not talk about this. This is a 4 mana legendary artifact planeswalker equipment. As long as the Aether Spark is attached to a creature, it can't be attacked and has, whenever equipped creature deals combat damage during your turn, put that many loyalty counters on the Aether Spark. Its +1 ability is attach it to up to 1 target creature, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature. -5 is draw 2 cards, and -10 is add 10 mana of any one color. I honestly don't know how to evaluate this card. It's kind of cool that you can get it off of Stoneforge. Go ahead. You got opinions.
I think I like it. Yeah, I like it. It's all colorless.
Yeah.
It like all colorless, workshop mana, ancient 2 mana, extra mana.
Workshop. You can cast a planeswalker off of
You can cast it off of Mishra's
Workshop. Off of Workshop, yeah.
And then having played with this card, it is like shockingly annoying to deal with. Like, yeah, it dies to shatter, Boseiju, whatever. But like you accept that when you're playing artifacts. That just happens. But like if you're attaching this to a creature and it can't be attacked, it is so annoying. And then even if it could be attacked, like it's mostly starting with 5 loyalty, which is not nothing, especially when you can get it out on Mishra's Workshop, City of Traders, Ancient Tomb, like just fast mana of any color to get this into play, and attaching it to anything like as big as a Kappa Cannoneer and as small as a Thopter token.
It triggers your Kappa Cannoneer.
Yeah. and it's just like the play pattern with this card from when I have played it has been play it, equip, hit, draw 2, and like that's pretty good. Or just like play it, equip, draw 2, pop it over to another thing to like make their blocks awkward, and then next turn draw 2. Like it just I've enjoyed the play patterns with this card, and I think the surrounding game pieces in Highlander only make it more appealing. And yeah, Stoneforge for a Planeswalker is kind of funny.
So decks for this, I like it in the blue-white deck. I might try it in red-white artifacts. I have to try it.
I'm gonna play this in Mishra's Workshop decks and Ancient Tomb artifact kind of decks.
Yep.
I also just want to play this in red-white equipment, because like especially my more grindier version, like it's gonna be so annoying.
Well, even my Blitz one, you run out of steam.
Yeah.
Right? You dump your hand, and a threatening proactive card that also draws you cards is absurd. That's why I used to play sort of Fire Nice, just for the redundant gas, you know?
Yeah, it's I think this card is more annoying than it looks. Like more difficult to deal with.
Sure.
Yeah. Onto lands. The first land we're talking about is from the Commander product. It's called Accursed Duneyard. It's a land that taps for a colorless, then has paid 2 generic, tap, regenerate target shade, skeleton, specter, and then we're onto the real creature types. Spirit, vampire,
Pause.
wraith, and then back to a real creature type, zombie. Regenerate target shade, skeleton, specter, spirit, vampire, wraith, or zombie. I think it's pretty reasonable that if you're in a monocolored or colored variation of vampires or zombies or spirits, that you should play this card.
Yeah.
Because nobody knows how regenerate works nowadays.
No, they really
You're going to
don't.
get so many free wins off of people that were like born during like, I don't know, George W. Bush's second presidency. Like it's just they won't know how regenerate works.
I mean,
it says it on the card.
I do want to talk about that for a second, because it's weird, because my experience with Highlander has always been playing with like other Magic boomers, right?
Yeah.
Because it is, let's be real, a prohibitively expensive format to get into.
Mm-hmm.
And Monday night, I sat across from somebody. They started playing Magic in Bloomborough. They were brand new to Magic. They loved Bloomborough. They got into it with a friend. Their buddies like start playing Highlander. They showed up. Their deck just wasn't quite there yet, but they're having a great time. They're like, I'm just here to play. I love this. And so it's easy to dunk, but on the other hand, it's just like, I can't imagine just how much knowledge and onboarding there is to pick up in this format, right?
Full disclosure, I am making a joke for the sake of content.
I'm not trying to roast
I know
you
you're
here.
not going to get me.
Sure,
I'm getting ahead of them. Because, Highlander, despite being prohibitively expensive when it comes to like Power 9 or Moxen or whatever, is also a format where people don't care if you're playing with a piece of paper that has Black Lotus written on it. Yeah. And also, Highlander players, by and large, are not crappy people. Have you been to a Modern tournament? God, I wanted to shower after round 2. Like, you're going to play with people that are generally nicer, more supportive, more, they're going to explain what Regenerate's going to do. They're going to, lead you through. They're not going to mock you when you bring out your skeleton deck and you play your Accursed Duneyard. They'll do it instead behind your back on their podcast they host.
Man, I think Regenerate actually came up in an interaction like recently in a game too, being like, so just to make sure we're both clear on this, you have to regenerate before damage. They're like, okay, just making sure. Because it's a weird one, man. It is a weird one.
I had such a funny moment where I saw somebody playing at the store with like a green-red deck that they have, that they hadn't played Highlander for like 8 years.
It's me?
No. And they had a River Boa, and they like attacked their blue-red player, and the player's like, bolt it. And they're like, I'll regenerate. And they're like, Oh, okay. I guess I'll block then. And they're like, no, you can't. It's got Island Walk. And they're like, oh no, they got hit by the double whammy of not knowing all these old words.
But also shouldn't have been removed from combat when it regenerated too. I thought that was also part of regenerate.
Oh yeah, maybe they screwed up.
You like tap, you tap and you remove it from combat, don't you?
It wasn't a real match. It wasn't a tournament match.
Either way, you're just like, how does it work?
That rules.
All right, the last card we're going to talk about today.
I was just birding. I was like, oh, that's dope. All right, great.
Is the Verge cycle. We got a brand new cycle of lands. So the way these work is they all tap for a base color, and then you can activate it for the ally. I'm so bad about
enemy.
It's the enemy color if you control the base color. So the Bleachbone Verge, for example, taps for black. You can add a white if you control a plains or a swamp.
I would like to make a suggestion as we go through these, because they are all they're part of the cycle, but they function differently depending on the deck. Like this one, I'm not actually super enthused to play this in like an Orzhov deck, because the Orzhov decks are often white based, splashing black.
Oh, and you don't want black early.
It's a little awkward to have this be my first land if I'm trying to play Guide of Souls or Ocelot.
You know what? Let's go through them really quickly. I thought we were just going to introduce them as a basic cycle, but if you got places, if you got more to say, by all means.
Yeah, like the blue red one, the River Pyre Verge.
Yep.
Adds a red right away and then adds blue later. This can be awkward with not having a cantrip on one, but if you have two lands in a blue-red deck, like you're going to have the blue on the turn that you want to hold up counter magic or start doing that kind of thing, and you'll have the red to be able to chain lightning or kill off the threat if you're on the
gives
draw.
You bolt rather than chain lightning, but doesn't give you like brainstorm, ponder, preordain,
right?
whatever.
Which are often just at their best when you use them later on, anyways, as you need to figure out what you are doing to develop your board in reaction to what your opponent has done or what is resolved on your end. So I like the blue-red one.
All right.
Sun Billow is the white-red one. I like this one as well because again, similarly to the Orzhov one, you are white base, but you have some red splashes, right? Like I'm a mono white deck, but here's my Broadside Bombardiers on turn 3, or here's my Magus of the Moon or Blood Moon, or my King Aomer, or my Winota, or Caves of Chaos, right? Like you only need one red pip.
Yeah, like white decks. And then red later for sure.
Yeah, Wastewood Verge is green on the front and black in the back. And that means that you get to play your Llanowar elves out early. And then after, if you need to develop like a Liliana, you have the double black for that. Or if you just need a single black for your Grist or whatever, like it's fine. You've developed a dork. So that's good. I like this one. And then the final one is the blue-green one. We had blue on turn 1 so that we can, cantrip or always have our counter spells up, but then we're going to have green to be able to cast our Oko.
So this is better for merfolk rather than like classic blue-green Sorensen or something, right?
Yes, yeah. I don't know if I'm playing this in like a Llanowar elf deck that adds blue. I mean, maybe if I like this is all this is not necessarily something you need to like lose sleep over.
No, of
because
course not.
often like they'll just be fine.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to like trying to min-max your deck, your mana base is one of the best places to do that, and this is something to consider.
I think I like these better than check lands, just specifically because they're always untapped, which is huge in a format as fast as ours.
Yes.
It is a little bit awkward because the check lands will always be more reliable on turn 2.
Yeah.
And with the increase of surveil lands and stuff like that, the chances of these hitting the colors is just higher because you have more forest as opposed to like lands that compared to the Scars lands, for example.
Yeah, the check lands have mostly faded away other than like 2-color decks or certain 3-color blue decks.
Sure.
Where you're like, I need Cryptic Command mana, but I also want to escape Flage or whatever.
I just don't want to die to Blood Moon.
But yeah, these Verges have been great. I've been really impressed with them. Yep.
Well, that's the set review.
Great.
What do you think of the set? Or let me go first. You have a lot to say.
I talk a lot.
Yeah, no, I mean, no worries, no worries. I just want to make sure, look, there's a very good chance you're going to hit all of my points. So I'll go first.
Yep.
I was very low on the set during spoiler season. I thought it was a mess in terms of power level, in terms of just cohesiveness. and then getting an opportunity to play it. I got to play basically the pre-release. I got to play draft that we did here, and starting to see some of these cards in Highlander. I am significantly higher on this set than I was before. I am so pleasantly surprised with this set. I'd like to move away from, the hero of the week. Everybody's wearing a hat style sets, but that's another thing. The power level, I think, is in a pretty good spot. There's a couple of pushed cards that I'm very excited to brew around, specifically the discard deck and the Bright Glass Gear Hulk, and also as a enjoyer of artifact decks, love it.
Yeah, I think if the best card in the set is a green-white 4-drop that tutors for like 1-drops or less, you're in a pretty good spot. Like, that's a pretty healthy place to be in. I too am not a fan of this, like, thematically.
Sure.
But ultimately, if we're playing in a competitive environment, gameplay is the most important element.
For sure.
And the gameplay aspect of these cards is mostly positive, and in fact, in some cases, great, right? Like, I am excited to play these cards, which, even for sets like Foundations that we talked about, where the cards were on a lower power level than this, certainly, but there were some appealing cards, I wouldn't say I was excited to play many of those cards outside of like Kiora or whatever. And if there are ones that I'm forgetting, well, then that should speak to how memorable some of them.
The Jumpstart had more stuff. I kind of take Foundations and Jumpstart.
Yeah, the Jumpstart had some good stuff, but Foundations and even Duskmourn, like, Duskmourn had some bangers for sure, but like, this one, however, it hits.
Yeah.
Which is surprising to me.
Yeah.
But like, I want to go home and change my archetypes around Bright Glass Gear Hulk. I want to rebuild Hoof. Like, that's a cool thing to get from sets like this.
Welder, I want to make a discard deck. I want to make a green-white, like, little kid sister deck. I want to put together the Davy B blue-white artifact beatdown deck again. Like, there's some,
It's funny to see cards that look very commandery and chasey, like the Aether Spark or Radiant Lotus 2, and be like, wait a minute, this might be really, like, genuinely really strong in this archetype too, which, I can't imagine they have us in mind when they make these cards, but it is nice that your commander bait is also just like something that is genuinely impactful. Yeah.
Well, then with that, friends, let's call it there. Thank you so much for watching our set review for Aetherdrift. I was about to call it Aether Spark.
Oh, well, not a bad name, honestly.
I've been Serge, joined by Wheeler.
I have more water than...
Again?
What? That was like identical timing. That was pretty great. That was good. That was good.
Shout out to James on Tech.
That's me.
Want to thank each and every one of you for your support over at the Patreon at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. Thank you so much for watching. As always, if there's any cards you thought we missed, give us your Gear Hulk ranking, all that stuff down below. We'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.